Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. That's right. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we break down the biggest stories, the most controversial topics, the most intense debates going on in the world. And we don't do a drive-by conversation. We don't do superficial talking points because this ain't no cable news show. This ain't no regular podcast. This is a global classroom. And I want to welcome everybody tonight for what is supposed to be and will be an amazing conversation. And that conversation, of course, starts with some of the most absurd news imaginable. A police chief has been forced to resign. He's been forced to resign because he hired the officer who killed Tamir Rice. Y'all should remember the story of Tamir Rice. He was a young man who out of Cincinnati, Ohio, who was only 12 or 13 years old. And Tamir was playing in a playground in November of 2014. And the police pull up on Tamir because he's playing outside with a toy gun. And when they pull up on Tamir Rice, he was 12 at the time. He wasn't 30, he was 12. When they pull up on Tamir Rice, they don't take a moment to stage themselves. They don't take a moment to assess the situation. They don't take a moment to figure out what they could do differently. All they do is within seconds, they open fire on the 12-year-old boy. And the officer who opened fire on the 12-year-old boy, the officer who killed Tamir Rice, is a man named Timothy Lohman. He is 26 years old. And again, he pulls up and opens fire on this 12-year-old boy. Now, there was another officer there. His name was Frank Garnback. He was 46, but he didn't pull the trigger. Now, here's the crazy part. They called in and they said that Tamir was 20 and armed and dangerous. This is in Cleveland, Ohio. Forgive me if I worry that I said Cincinnati. If I did, I meant Cleveland. Cleveland, Ohio, because this is Cuyahoga County. Anyway, the officer kills Tamir. Now, you know, police officers always or almost always get off for killing unarmed people. And they damn sure get off for killing people where they have even the most irrational and unreasonable defense of themselves. And in this case, that's what they did. They shot a 12-year-old boy. And they saw him as a big grown man, because that's what happens. All the studies show black boys are shown as older and more guilty than their white counterparts. They did all of that to him. They kill him. The police don't go to jail. The police get off for this. Now, even if you get off, you don't go to prison. Even if you get asked to resign, or even if you quit, no matter what, right? Even if you get public rebuke or public praise, whatever the situation is, at the end of the day, if you're an officer that kills people and the public doesn't like it, and the police department doesn't like it, even if they don't think it's illegal, but they argue that you could have moved differently, even if all of that happens, which is basically what happened in this case, right? The police understood that he did something wrong. There was a wrongful death suit, but the wrongful death suit is civil. There's no criminal thing that they could do. The Justice Department decided that they couldn't bring criminal charges against the two officers. But all of that aside, there's a very clear thing that isn't disputable. There's a very clear thing that is not disputable, and that is that you don't hire the officer again. You and I might disagree about whether or not you put the officer in jail. You and I might disagree about whether or not there should have been a federal indictment. You and I may disagree on the particulars, but everybody in the world who saw this thought that the officer could have done something different. He didn't have to pull up and within seconds shoot this boy. He didn't have to do that. They didn't stage themselves. They didn't hide behind something. They didn't make an announcement. They didn't say drop your weapon and wait. They did none of the things that you're supposed to do. They killed this 12-year-old boy who they thought was 20 just because he was black and outside. So the one job that the rest of the world had, the one job that the other police departments in the world had was to not hire that man on your screen right now. That's the only job they had. So what do? They hire him again. The man didn't go to Russia. The man didn't go to Cuba. The man didn't go, you know what I'm saying, to South Africa, where maybe you wouldn't know who he was. He just went to West Virginia. The man went to the White Sulphur Springs Police Department. By the way, if you're a killer cop that goes around killing Negroes, the White Sulphur Springs Police Department probably sounds like the kind of place you should go anyway. He goes to the White Sulphur Springs Police Department, and they hire him. That's right. That's right. The chief of police, D.S. Tubert, hired Timothy Loman to be a police officer again. To be a police officer again. There are millions of people you could have hired for this. There are thousands of people in the city, hundreds of people in the city who could have been part of this police department. Other people made the right decision. Loman, he tried to get into multiple police departments. He tried to join other police forces, and he always got stopped. But somehow the White Sulphur Springs Police Department hired him as a probationary officer. And as you know, he was forced to resign again. They didn't fire him. He was forced to resign. Because you know what? Killing kids is not a real good resume builder, or it shouldn't be a really good resume builder if you want to be a police officer. But all that said, he resigned. And now the chief of police, D.S. Tubert, was forced to resign. He demoted himself to a patrolman. And it's a small town, ain't that dramatic of a move. But the point is a few things. One, we need a system, a national system that prevents this from happening. Killer cops, whether they're found innocent or guilty, and I'm not talking about when you get caught in a self-defense firefight. I'm not saying you should get fired from your job, but if you've been fired from your job or forced to leave your job because you kill people, then there should be some database that makes it really easy to not get hired elsewhere. The other thing is, it's hard for me to believe that you hire a police officer and you don't even hit Google. Because if you type his name on the Googles, it comes up pretty clear. It comes up pretty clear. So either they didn't Google, they didn't search, or they searched and didn't care. That's my suspicion. Because there's a lot of police officers out there that don't mind hiring killer cops. There are a lot of police officers that love to dump money in the GoFundMe campaigns of killer cops. They love to get their friends and family to be on the juries, or they pray that their friends and families are on the juries for the trials of these killer cops. So I don't necessarily think this was an honest mistake. There's a clear problem in the hiring process. And of course, Kathy Glover, who's the mayor of the town, steps in and says, well, that's the problem. She said, although I was not aware of the situation regarding the hiring, I still accept accountability as a city leader, and this should not have happened. You don't say. She said, I accept that there are mistakes in the current process that we have, and those mistakes will be reviewed and changed moving forward. What does that mean? And it's not just for this town. It should be for Philadelphia, should be for Cleveland, should be for Cincinnati, should be for Chicago, should be for every city in this country. There should be a very clear mechanism to prevent killer cops from getting hired again. Because too often they kill us. They go off into anonymity again, and then after that, they get hired again, and they continue their reign of terror. So shout out to the people that exposed this, and let's again create mechanisms, sustainable public policy to prevent this from happening again. Another story that I want to talk to y'all about before I bring on my extraordinary guest tonight is a video that's been going kind viral on TikTok. And if you're old like me, you don't get the videos on TikTok. You get the videos on Instagram once they make it from TikTok to the other places. Well, I'm one of those people, and I saw this video on social media. It's a video of Bernie Sanders being asked a very simple and basic question about Israel-Palestine. Listen to what he said.
Bernie, Senator, why do you continue to say that Israel has a right to defend itself when it's committing a genocide? It's not defense. They're murdering Palestinians. They bombed a school just 24 hours ago. How can you keep saying that it has a right? It's on occupied land, the land of my ancestors. They killed my own family.
Bernie Sanders somehow has no words. Either he can't speak or he can't hear or both, because the man asked a very clear question. Now, let me establish some benefit of the doubt for you, because some of y'all are going to say, well, Bernie can't answer everybody who heckles him. That's fair. Senators and representatives in the Congress get asked questions all the time on video, trying to get caught in a gotcha moment. The asker often is trying to catch them in a gotcha moment. And so I get that you can't answer everybody, but I find that they answered the questions they want to answer. If they said, Senator, do you support Israel's right to exist? I guarantee you he would have said yes. If they said, Senator, do you support just economic justice? I guarantee you Bernie would have said yes. But suddenly, when it's a question he doesn't want to answer, he gets quiet. And here's the thing. Bernie has been consistently trash on the issue of Israel-Palestine since October 7th. So this is not an outlier. Bernie Sanders has been a political coward on this issue since October 7th, since day one. When it first happens, Bernie Sanders is out here saying all the same talking points that everybody else was. For years, Bernie got the benefit of the doubt because he said we need to hold Israel accountable for human rights violations. We need to hold Israel accountable and condition funding on them acting right toward Palestinians. And we all said, okay, Bernie, it's a low bar, but at least you cleared the bar. He was still better than everybody else on the issue who was running for president. But then October 7th comes, and now Bernie's basically saying you can't. He's saying all the same stuff, right? He's supporting Israel's genocidal war. He's not repudiating Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip for almost a month after October 7th. Now, at some point, he starts to say, okay, this is too far. He starts to say, okay, at some point, Netanyahu must be stopped. But Bernie Sanders has consistently been cowardly on this issue. First of all, Bernie Sanders always makes it seem as if the issue with Israel is Netanyahu's far right-wing government. Listen to Bernie Sanders. That's what he always says. Netanyahu's far right-wing government is causing these problems. No, it's not. This is a fundamental problem with the state of Israel as an ethno-state, as an apartheid state, as a state founded on inequality and settler colonialism. There is a foundational structural problem with Israel, just like there's a foundational structural problem with the United States, just like there's a foundational structural problem with France. But we don't want to talk about that. So when Bernie makes it seem like all we got to do is get rid of Netanyahu, we can go back to the status quo, he's reinforcing the problem. Because then even if you got rid of Netanyahu right now, Benny Gantz back, who's not that progressive, but he's certainly to the left of Netanyahu at this point. You still have illegal settlements in the West Bank. You still have a siege in Gaza. You still have inequality inside of the state of Israel. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, you got the same problems. But Bernie is able to use that easy talking point to let him off the hook for actually critiquing Israel as an ethno-state. And he keeps saying Israel has a right to defend itself. Of course, Israel has a right to defend itself. Every country has a right to defend itself. Every nation state has a right to defend itself within reasonable boundaries and within reasonable conditions under international law. No country has a right to defend itself in areas that it occupies. I can't occupy a place that doesn't have a right to defend myself. That's like me running up in your crib with a gun, trying to rob your house, and then you try to shoot at me, and I shoot back and say it was self-defense. No, it'd be self-defense if you shot at me on the street. It ain't self-defense in your house. But Bernie uses the language of Israel has a right to defend itself because it's like kissing a baby. No one's going to object to it. No one's going to get mad about it. No one's going to push back against it. No one's going to get frustrated about it because when you do that, it makes you politically palatable. But what Bernie should be saying is the question of Israel's right to defend itself has absolutely nothing to do with the question of the Gaza Strip. It has absolutely nothing to do with what's happening in the West Bank under illegal occupation. If you want to talk about what happened on October 7th on Israeli territory, you can talk about the right to defend oneself. And you can say you're at war and you're going to battle at war. You can have that debate. You can have that conversation. But what's happening in Gaza right now, 4 schools were bombed in 4 consecutive days. Innocent children were killed 4 consecutive days who are hiding. That ain't the right to defend oneself. Hospitals destroyed. Refugee camps bombed. Water wells decimated. Universities razed. You can't say all that stuff is the right to defend oneself. And Bernie knows better. And that's why when he's confronted on that stupid talking point, you see what he just did. He got quiet. Now he quieter than a church mouse pissing on cotton. Not because he doesn't have something to say, but because his choices are to either lie and get caught in a lie or tell the truth and actually take a principled but dangerous position. And Bernie's reminding us that he ain't willing to do that. Not on this issue. Anyway, y'all, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Kendrick Lamar and the rapper named Drake. Rest in peace. We're going to, at least to his career. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about not just what their battle means, but what it means with regard to gender, to identity, and to the soul of hip hop. Stay right here. Welcome back to Night School. For the last 2 months, pop culture and certainly the rap industry has been in a chokehold. The conversation that we've been having, the debate we've been having, the trash talking we've been having, the pettiness we've been engaged in has all been surrounding Kendrick Lamar and Drake. At this point, from where I stand, it's no longer a question of who won the battle. Kendrick Lamar absolutely decimated Drake at this point because you can go anywhere from preschool graduations to international basketball games and you're hearing people singing "They Not Like Us." That tells you everything you need to know. But here in Night School, we like to go deeper than that. We don't just want to talk about the rap part of it. We want to talk about what the rap part of it means for the rest of the culture, for the rest of our society. We want to talk about what lessons we can learn and how we can break those lessons down to make sense of not just what's possible for hip hop, what's possible for everything going on in our world. And so today we got a special guest. Her name is Jamila Lemieux. She wrote a really, I think, a wonderful piece in Vanity Fair. And you all should go to Vanity Fair and check this out, that talks about Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and this struggle, as you put it, Jamila, for hip hop's soul. Jamila, welcome back to Night School. It's good to see you. What made you want to write this piece?
You know, as I say in the piece, I am a longtime fan of Kendrick and a longtime hater of Drake. We have that in common. But, you know, I had to kind of look at some of my own hypocrisy while I was enjoying this battle because, you know, it's a remarkable moment. For the first time, mainstream rappers in any meaningful way are defending girls and women. The only time we've heard this before from mainstream male rappers would be on Tupac's Keep Your Head Up. And both these rappers are charging each other with mistreating women or girls. And so I wonder why it's so easy for us to believe the allegations against Drake. I mean, granted, there's a lot of evidence that he likes very young girls. There's no shortage of footage of him partying with super young girls, including the Jenner sisters. The weird texting thing.
Let's break some of this down for 2 reasons. One, so the audience has back okay. Context. And 2, so I don't get sued. First, when you talk about what these allegations are, first, the allegation against Drake is that he dates, when you say very young girls, you mean like I feel like this is like R. Kelly Teray interview, but how young we talking?
How young do you mean? Meaning that he's been seen partying with girls that were 16, 17, 18 years old.
That's young. That's illegal. That's not legal.
Right. There's also the footage of him from some concerts when he was 29, where he was bringing 17-year-old girls on stage, and they would tell him that he was 17, and he would say, "Oh man, but you're so fine, you look so good," you know, and hug and kiss on them. So between that and him texting Millie Bobby Brown when she was, you know, just a young teenager herself, we have enough reason to think something might be up with Drake when it comes to him and young girls. He's even throughout the beef said it himself, like, "Oh, of course I expected the Epstein angle," you know, as if that's the normal thing to expect for yourself. He fired.
Why did you expect the Epstein?
Why do you expect that? I would never like.
It's not what I would think if I had beef with somebody. I wouldn't think that he, you know, compare me to the world's most infamous pedophile.
No. And Drake fired back against Kendrick and accused him of, among other things, abusing his wife.
Yes.
And so as hip hop fans, many of us have basically said we're riding with Kendrick through this. He's the obvious champion of the beef, but that means that we're saying we don't believe the allegations against Kendrick. And I'm not saying that I believe them myself. I'm admitting in the article that I too have decided that I don't believe Drake, and I don't have any evidence against Kendrick in the way that we have evidence against Drake.
Is it purely just a lack of evidence, like on some court stuff, or do you have an investment in believing that, you know, Mr. Morale, you know, is that, and the Big Steppers is really that guy, that he has that family unit, that he is who he says he is?
I think it's both. You know, I think for the vast majority, we want to believe that Kendrick is who he's presented himself to us to be, which is a family man, you know. And then for me personally, there is that lack of evidence. You know, if there was a woman who'd come forward and say, "Hey, Kendrick harmed me," I would feel very differently about him. And that's not to say that it's easy for women to come forward, you know, especially if we're talking about his wife or his fiance who he's still with, you know. So it's completely unfathomable.
How long have you been engaged, by the way?
A long time.
That might be another story for the time. And I'm not being shady or nothing like that, but, you know, far be it from me to judge anybody. But I, you know, as someone who got married at 45, but or 44, but it's an interesting piece of it that Drake also brought up with Kendrick was not just the abuse allegations, but the whole, you act like you got a wholesome family, but you're really doing some other stuff out of town, that you know, and that she's also, you know, that her baby is by Dave, you know, Dave Free. This, I mean, to me, it was also very Housewivesy like. It was very there was a lot of dry snitching, a lot of allegations, things that get stereotypically assigned to women. I found in this debate too. Which also to me played into some of the gender politics of this. Suddenly, it's the men accusing each other of BBLs and cheating and having secret side deals, etc. It just felt very different to me.
It is, but it isn't. Because when we think about some of the rap beefs we've seen throughout history, you know, Tupac claiming to have slept with Faith when she was married to Biggie, and Jay-Z and Nas's whole beef starts over a woman.
Yeah,
you know?
That's true. That felt different, though.
It definitely felt different because they weren't necessarily talking about the relationships with the women. They weren't talking about what kind of husband Biggie was or what kind of wife Faith may have been.
Right. And they weren't snitching. It's one thing to say, "I slept with her." It's another thing to say, "Yo, I heard so-and-so slept with her," or dry snitching, "Hey, I heard you're sleeping with somebody else." I mean, that's another, that's, again, not making a judgment about it, but it just seems like a different moment. To me, it was all the Drake stuff. To me, Drake introduced all of this behavior to the conversation. But anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked from your central thesis, which I think is a really important one, which is that this was a moment where Black men in particular were standing up and defending women.
And that's unique. You know, I mean, arguably they were both doing it. Now, if Drake is just straight up lying about Kendrick abusing his wife and stepping out on her, and, you know, Kendrick has talked about his struggles with infidelity in the past. So we can't, you know, it's not hard to imagine that there was some truth to that, at least, you know, if not present time in the past. But, you know, like, I think about Not Like Us being, this is beyond the conversation about the biggest diss record ever. And Damon Young pointed this out to me yesterday. Like, when you talk about Not Like Us, we're talking about like the Macarena or Who Let the Dogs Out in terms of just how massive a song that it is, right?
It is a monster. It's still number one, right? It's been number one since May.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. It's going to be one of the biggest rap records of all time, and on this record, a man is accused of disrespecting women, having a thing for young girls. And, and we're all singing along to this. And so it makes me wonder, like, one, how does Drake come back?
That's why I'm laughing, by the way. I'm not laughing at the content. I'm laughing at just, I mean, when you talk about a comeuppance for Drake, if you're a Drake hater, you got to be in heaven right now. When every time you go outside, you got whole nightclubs, you got whole stadiums, you got music videos all clowning him. You got people who don't even know what it means calling him a freaky ass nigga. You got people, I mean, they're saying pedophile like it's not the worst thing you could call somebody. I'm not saying that's okay. You know what I mean? I'm just saying this is a whatever you think 50 Cent did to Ja Rule, this is that times 100, is it not?
Absolutely. I mean, no rapper has ever, I think, been annihilated this way in a beef. Like there's never been such a decisive victory where the other person was just so thoroughly humiliated. People will argue all day over who won, Jay-Z or Nas. And granted, most people would probably say Nas, but there's still a strong case for Jay-Z. You can't arguably say that Drake won in this beef or even really scored any points. I mean, people don't believe the things that he's saying, and he's just, I mean, the way Kendrick broke down Drake's relationship to Atlanta rappers, how can them ever work with him again? Like, what does that look like? Do you really want to be the one to put BBL Drizzy in your video after, you were listed as being complacent and helping him to be a colonizer? And I just think about, brands, right? Like Drake is nominated for Kids' Choice Awards at Nickelodeon, right?
Not no more.
That ceremony this year.
No, that would be the joke will write itself. He literally cannot show up to the Kids' Choice Awards ever. Wow. So does this change the game for how we think and talk about gender politics and hip hop? I mean, will we see a trend of rappers who now, when they come after dude, they won't just come after dude for being a snitch. They won't just come after dude. They won't just use homophobic slurs. That maybe, just maybe, they'll critique people for the type of partner they are, the type of parent they are. Because that's the other piece of this, right?
Yes.
Pusha T starts this, with the story of Adidon, when he comes after Drake, you are hiding a child, right? And then Kendrick follows up by calling him a deadbeat. He does Meet the Grams, where he literally has a conversation with the son, the mom. I mean, he breaks down the whole dysfunctional family structure, but a lot of it hinges on him being the product of a deadbeat dad and him becoming a deadbeat dad. He also accuses Drake of having a second secret kid, which also seems like something that was disproven, or at least not proven. So, I mean, Kendrick has some questionable allegations on his side. It just seems like we don't care as much.
We don't care. And part of that is because Kendrick outperformed. If Drake had somehow been the better rapper, made better music, maybe Certified Pedophile wouldn't have hit as hard as it did, but it does make me wonder, like, going forward, there is the possibility here for this being a new moment in how women are discussed in hip hop, in terms of holding rappers to standards for how they treat women. That if I'm in a battle with you, if I got an issue with you, part of what I can bring up against you is that you mistreat girls. Because you look at the numbers of allegations of violence against rappers that I name in the story, and there are many, many of them. I forgot some. There's so many of them. That's not usually been used against any of these guys, right? Many of those guys that were mentioned in that story have been, oh, my cat wants to be on camera. Many of those guys that were listed as having allegations of violence against women in that story have been in their own rap beefs. And the way that they've treated girls has never never been discussed. That was never part of the story. And I think that, hoping between just a changing world, like the Me Too movement, moments like watching the undoing of Diddy and watching it just be so irrefutable that you can't defend him because now we literally have him on camera stomping Cassie out. you know, with the rise of women in hip hop taking up more space than they have arguably ever before, we can say, okay, the way you treat women and children matters. You know, it matters if you're.
Let me push back a little bit, because I hope you're right, by the way. But it seemed to me that the thing that knocked Diddy out of here wasn't the Cassie thing. I mean, that was certainly devastating, but it's hard to know because Diddy was already kind of out of here by the time the Cassie video comes out. It seems to me that most of the world, particularly the men in hip hop that were talking about Diddy, they weren't talking about how he treated women. They weren't talking about the allegations of the underage girl being sexually assaulted in the studio. They weren't talking about the decades of allegations against Diddy that were credible. It seemed like most people were talking about him being gay, right? It seemed like the no Diddy thing was the thing that got people going. You know what I mean? And I guess that concerns me. And with Kendrick, it's like there's this moment where he's talking about Mr. Morale and and all this stuff and family and communication and treating women right. But when he does the pop out show, the first person on stage to introduce They're Not Like Us is Dr. Dre, who assaulted D Barnes, what may be the most famous hip hop assault that we know of, right? So I'm like, I don't know. I hope that this is a new turn. I just don't know that I'm nervous that it's not.
I'm nervous too. You know, I want to be optimistic. And I think this is going to have a lot to do with how female listeners react, right? Because we're going to have to be the ones to say these guardrails exist now and this matters, you know, and we're going to have to be loud about it because you're right. Men in particular, when it came to Diddy, didn't have much to say until the gay allegations came out. And then, right, you know, we're ready to be done with him. Prior to that, it was, you know, protect this black man. They're trying to tear him down, his legacy. And the Cassie video did silence a lot of that talk because it then became something that you couldn't deny. But until we have footage, you know, most of the guys that I mentioned in the story with these accusations of violence, including Dre and D Barnes, there's no footage. We haven't seen it. Right. And so we've always treated these things as he said, she said, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened.
Right. Even when Dre makes a song or Eminem makes a song with Dre where he says, you know what I mean? I'm gonna take advice from a dude to slap D Barnes. You know what I mean? Dre doesn't deny that he slapped D Barnes. And yet the public, like you said, will become willfully ignorant of it. We just pretend it didn't happen. Like it wasn't a secret room. It was a whole bunch of people in that room. And of course, I did an interview with D Barnes and she talks about it right here on the channel, as well as elsewhere. So I think you're right. I think we should be cautiously optimistic. But part of the work I think that all of us have to do is to not just wait to see what happens, but to push that agenda forward. We can change the narrative so that rappers want to call people deadbeats dad. We should be the ones making being a deadbeat dad not cool. We should be the ones making being a poor partner not cool. We should be the ones making all these things not cool. That's the work we can do too. And your article goes a long way of helping us do that work. Everybody, make sure you check out Jamilah Lemieux's brilliant article in Vanity Fair, where she breaks down all the science on hip hop, all the science on Kendrick, all the science on gender politics. And the best part, she does it from the principled perspective of a Drake hater. Jamilah, thank you so much for being you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, before we go, we got one more story we want to get to. And it's an important story. It's a story that I've been just beating the drum on for the last week or two. And it's not because I'm a hater. It's because I want our people to be free and I want our country to have a fighting chance at justice. I'm talking about the potential departure of Joseph Robinette Biden from the presidential race. There is a news story that is out right now in the New York Times. And the New York Times has been doing great work on this, I got to say. And the Times be jacked up sometimes, but there's a new report at the New York Times that says that some longtime aides and advisors to President Biden have become increasingly convinced that he will have to step aside from the campaign and move out of the way if the Democrats are going to have any chance at winning this election. These are people who are advisors in the administration and people who are specifically working on the campaign. At least according to the New York Times, at least two of whom have told allies that they do not believe he should keep trying to run for a second term. They didn't just say that they have an analysis of his chances. They said that they would have to convince the president of a few arguments in order to make this thing happen. They said they have to convince him that he can't actually beat Donald Trump, because it's just like a prize fighter late in the fight who still thinks he's up on points, or he knows he's down on points but thinks he can get a knockout. Biden is like, I'm winning, or if I'm not winning, I will win. He doesn't understand that. The next thing is they have to persuade him, at least this is their perspective, they have to persuade him that somebody else could beat him. Because it's not just, can I beat Trump? It's also, am I the best chance at Trump? Because if he says, well, look, I might not be doing great, but what you think Kamala gonna do? What you think Gavin Newsom gonna do? That presents its own challenge. So he has to be convinced that he can't win and that somebody else can. And then the third thing is, and this is, I think, the thing that speaks most to President Biden's commitment to his party and to his country, is President Biden wants to be assured that the way that it would happen would be principled and orderly. This is all according to Joe Biden's insiders, his friends, his comrades, etc. In other words, he doesn't want a mess at the Democratic convention. He doesn't want to step aside and it turn into chaos and he go down in history. And that's the selfish part of it. He doesn't want to go down in history as the president who created the most chaotic convention ever. And so this is a moment. This is a moment. No matter what you're hearing publicly, everybody in the Democratic Party who has any power or insight right now wants Joe Biden to leave, or they're terrified that he's going to lose if he doesn't leave. Some want him to stay, but still don't think he can win. Don't believe what you're hearing at the press briefings. Don't believe what you're hearing on cable news. I'm telling you, as somebody who's been working in this business a long time and who has connects who are all over the political landscape, I'm telling you, nobody in the Democratic Party feels comfortable or safe for Joe Biden right now. They're just trying to figure out how they can exit without looking crazy. That's why Nancy Pelosi is saying, we need President Biden to make a final decision on whether he's staying. Biden made a final decision. He said it last week. He said, I'm staying. And he said, I'm going to beat Donald Trump in 2020. Yes, I said 2020. That ain't my mistake. That's his. He said he's going to beat him in 2020, even though it's actually 2024. That should tell you something. All that said, Pelosi's saying that to keep creating a door and a wedge for Biden to exit and not look like he flip-flopped. They want to make it seem like nothing's been decided yet. They're trying to give him an out. It's the political insiders, it's the political comrades, it's the people inside the Congress, and it's also A-list Hollywood celebrities like George Clooney, who we talked about last night. They all want Biden gone. Not because they don't like him, not because they don't respect him, not because they don't appreciate him, but because they do. They want him to go out as president. They want him to go out a winner. They want him to go out opening the space for somebody to do what absolutely must be done. And what absolutely must be done is ensuring that Donald Trump does not return to the White House. It's that simple. Anyway, I hope President Biden listens. I hope he appreciates the efforts that's being made behind the scenes and in front of the camera to get him to step aside, not out of hate, not out of jealousy, not out of anger, not out of dishonesty, not out of mendacity, not out of venality. You like them words? But out of respect and urgent concern for the status of this republic. Hopefully you listen, Mr. President. All right, family. Thank you for watching Night School. It's been another wonderful evening with y'all breaking stuff down. I want to shout out Jamila Lemieux for coming through and talking about hip-hop and breaking down the gender politics of Kendrick and Drake. We got a whole lot more to talk about. So make sure you share this video, because every single person who isn't watching it live needs to hear this conversation. Every single person who's not here now needs to catch it later, and that's how we grow the channel. So please, y'all, make sure you share the content. Also hit the like button and the subscribe button, because doing that increases our footprint in the digital space, and it shows YouTube and them YouTube algorithms that corporate media ain't the only game in town. Also, if you're so inclined, please hit the join button. If you don't see it on your phone, go to the desktop and hit the join button and become a monthly subscriber to the channel. By doing that, you give us the financial stability we need to continue to put out interesting, critical, radical, thorough, independent media. I don't have a billionaire behind me. I don't have a corporate media outlet funding me. This is all on the muscle. It's all powered by the people. And if you can't make a monthly commitment, go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. You see the platform links right there on your screen, and make a donation just for the month right now. If everybody watching right now would have just dropped $10 in for the month, would have just dropped in $10 for the month, we will meet all of our financial goals. And if you don't have $10 for the month, maybe drop in $5 or even $2.50 for the week. Whatever you got, we appreciate it. Even if it's just $1, all of it goes toward helping us fund our projects, pay our staff, expand our technological abilities, and build that studio. All of it comes with your support. So please do what you can. And if you don't have any cash, that's okay too. Like I said, just hit like, hit subscribe, share the content, and most of all, make sure you study, because that's what night school is all about. I'll see you later. In fact, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.